Oh, right. Hello. I've decided I wanted to do a couple of little tutorials just on kind of various elements of production as such. Obviously I'm not the world's best producer. I'm not going to tell you how you should do your mixes and how you should, compress and how you should EQ and whatnot. This tutorial I wanted to focus more on kind of little tips and tricks to make your compositions generally better, to make stuff sound less robotic and whatnot. I might experiment a little bit with synthesis, maybe go into massive. I do have things like FM8, but I'm not sure if they'll be worth going into because I don't know if a lot of people have got FM8. But without further ado, I'll look into this. So the first thing I want to look at was essentially like a piano sequence. When I first started out, I always had a lot of problem with pianos and them always sounding a bit bland, like a bit robotic and just not human-like at all. So I wanted to look at like velocity editing. Now obviously I'm using Cubase. I don't know how it is in a lot of other workstations. I've never used FL Studio. I can't speak for FL Studio. But I'm sure it does have a velocity editor. First off, I will look at the patch I'm using. I'm using Native Instruments Giant for Contact. I think it's £59, I think, if I remember rightly. But it's nice, just a very, very simple little piano. You've got a little bit of control with it. But yeah, so that's the piano I'm using. I've got two versions of it here. I've got one which is with the velocity editing, and then one which is without. So I'll play both, and then I'll look into how I normally go about doing it. I'm not going to go like too far in depth with it because I don't want to be patronising, but nevertheless, I'll get into it anyway. Here we go. I should have probably said before, this is maybe quite a stylistic specific kind of thing. If you want quite hard stabby piano, if you're doing like classic house or something like that, that's fine, obviously, go for it. But I'm focusing more here on getting like a very human-like sound. Okay, so the one without the velocity editing sounds like this. So you can hear it's a lot more, harsh and stabby. Again, if that's the kind of thing you're going for, don't let me stop you. So let me close these and I'll look closely into the velocity edited one. So all of my notes at the moment are quite soft, kind of low velocity, because that's what I was going for in the track. I've taken this out of one of my tracks. So it was already intended to be quite soft, but some things are notably softer than others and whatnot. So let me check. So first off, I guess the thing you notice, if you've got a quick change like that, so multiple chords leading into a kind of new phrase or whatever, I like to do it so it just gets harder with each chord. So it's like bum, bum, which it's a nicer effect because it kind of leads into the next chord a lot nicer. And as you can see in the velocity down here, it just increases. And then with things like these little ornaments in the piano, I often like to do those considerably softer than the main chords. That is a stylistic choice. That's obviously not something you have to do, but I personally like to do it because if you have those kind of things standing out too much, they really just kind of pierce through and overpower the main chords. You might want that. I'm not one to judge, but yeah, just take the velocity down on those a little bit, but not so much that you won't be able to hear them anymore. In fact, if I edit along with this one, so I'm gonna start off by taking everything down to like 50 on velocity. I mean, already because of this contact library, it already sounds quite nice. Because this library works really well with like soft playing and stuff. But if you want it to be even more kind of authentic, then just play around with it some more. So increasing velocity on here. So on that last chord, it stabs a little bit. Maybe a little bit hard on that one. It's a lot of trial and error a lot of the time, just to see whether it's what you want or not. And then with the ornaments, so a little bit lighter on those. There we are. And I'm going to go softer on this chord. You got to have I like to have a bit of variation in the velocity. So after a hard hitting chord, maybe a slightly softer one, and then a little bit harder and whatnot. And just play around with it and just, don't just go hard, or soft. And then this chord here, I've got the kind of high melody note playing with the chord as well. So what I'm going to do there is individually alter the higher chord, just so it's a little bit lower. A lot of the time, I haven't personally done it on this chord sequence, but a lot of the time I do like to alter certain notes individually. So bass, maybe I'll have a little bit higher, which it's not letting me do, but yeah, so have the bass a little bit higher, then kind of the mid-range notes just a little bit lower, just so it's a bit of a thicker chord as such, but again, stylistic choice. I don't really like how hard that chord is. When you've got little runs, I say runs, it's a very kind of short run, not really much of a run, but kind of little build-ups in the melody notes. I'd say significantly less velocity on those kind of things, because it, again, quite a nice lead up to the main note. And again, I've got the quick change in chords there, so we'll do the whole increasing velocity thing again. And then that is essentially all I do to it, really. I'll play that through. There we go. I will quickly look at just the effects and whatnot I've got on this. So first, my EQ. A pretty basic EQ. Bit of the mid's taken out, a lot of the kind of sub frequencies, little boost in the highs. I've got Pro Q. There's a second EQ on there. Can't honestly say why, but that's another thing, if that's any aid somewhat. I always like to boost the highs on the pianos, just to make them a little bit brighter. Even though they are being played softly, I still like to brighten them up a little bit. That's a sidechain. We could ignore that one. This is kind of specific to this piano because for whatever reason it's very quiet. So you have to boost a lot of the volume. So that's all that compressor's doing really. And then just simple reverb. This is Ambience. It's a free plugin. I use it for all my reverb just because it's very nice. So yeah, that is all I've done to the piano. Whilst I'm on the subject of velocity, I'm gonna look at stuff like hi-hats. I've covered this before in a stream of mine in the past, but I will go over it again just because it was helpful to a few people. So I'm going to be using Addictive Drums here. This is only the demo of it, but on the demo you can use the hi-hat and stuff, which is pretty good. For a free demo, you know, it's a reasonably sized download. You know, it's a gigabyte or two, but it's worth it in my opinion. So, alternatively, if I just quickly, for anybody who doesn't want to use a drum programmer, I'll show both ways of it. I will look at this sample pack. If you go, this is the Musicradar drum samples, another free sample pack. If you go onto Google and literally just search Musicradar acoustic drums, you'll get this folder, and it's got a lot of different velocity snares and whatnot. And then it's also got like electro kits, and so that might be good for anybody who's interested in that. So sorted hits. Yeah, I'll look at Addictive. Actually, yeah, I'll look at Addictive Drums first. So if you are using Addictive Drums, there's a number of ways you can change the sound of the hi-hat. I don't personally like the way the hi-hat comes, because it sounds a bit kind of too real, for lack of a better word. I don't want it to sound so acoustic, because the sound can be a little bit off, and the acoustics of it and stuff. So what I normally do is I turn these three buses down, so all you have is a clean hi-hat. And then the good thing with Addictive Drummer is that there's already a lot of different samples of the hi-hats. So there we go. So you've got a lot to play around with. But what I normally do is I'll just literally just write in a random pattern. So I'll go eighth notes, using different samples each time. So just so it varies it a little bit. And then kind of similarly to the piano, except a little bit differently, I might go a little bit softer for the on-beat hits. This works quite well as well when it's layered with drums. I'm not specifically talking like piano breakdowns, but it does work there as well. And then on the offbeat hits, or rather, say we're hitting on 1 and 3, the third hit, significantly less velocity, and by doing that you have just a kind of nice, realistic as such hi-hat loop, and then you can just do that, and there we go. The one thing I did stress when I talked about this before was to really try and use different samples as you're doing this, because if I just duplicate this quickly, I'll show you what I mean. In that, if you were literally to just use one sample, so just those 4. It's like every single hi-hat's got the same attack, so it's a little bit tedious to listen to, and it becomes really clear that it's just a loop. Similarly, if you were to just go, just a bit easier. If you were to just change every other hi-hat to a different sample, you can still really tell that it's just a loop. So yes, that's why obviously I've gone for the whole, you know, like 4 or 5 different samples. Just mix and match a little bit. So the loop's quite long, so it becomes hard to realise it's a loop basically. So there's our hi-hat and our piano. So I'll look now for anybody who wants to use samples rather than a drum programmer like that. So the really nice thing about these sample packs that I said about before, the Musicradar ones, they've got a ton of different hits for the same hi-hat and whatnot. So yeah, so I'll take the first 6, say, just drag them in like that, and then rearrange them like I did with the other hats. You can already see here these last 3 hats are significantly harder than the others, so what I'm going to do is just take them down a little bit. Maybe rearrange a little bit as well, so it's not the 3 hard hits right at the end. So we just say have that there, that there. There we go, there's a really short little loop. And then maybe just make it a little bit more interesting with some reverb. Very subtle reverb on hi-hats normally. Just kind of like that. And if it's the kind of style you're going for, you could always go for some ping pong delay. Just filter that out. I say ping pong. It's not obviously restricted to ping pong. You can go whatever you want, but. Nice little shuffle to it. Another thing you can do as well, I don't personally do this a lot, but you can add a phaser to it. If you're quite feeling quite insecure about your hi-hat patterns, you can stick a little phaser on it, and just it'll make a really subtle difference to the attack of each hat. So you can't really tell so much that it's a loop, but you want it really quite low down. You don't want the hi-hats to sound really phased. And I'd normally probably put the reverb and delay after it, so it doesn't affect the reverb and delay. But that's something you need to play around with, get the sound that's right for you. So there we go. So while I'm at it, I may well just build this little kind of section into more of a song as such. So I'm just going to grab a nice kick sample. This is the, for anybody that's wondering, this is the Simba Tambour kicks. If you just see that there, if you just Google that, it'll come up. Again, another free sample pack. In fact, I'll probably stick all these links in the description just to make it easier. So I'm doing it at 110 BPM here. So I guess it's a kind of new disco funk kind of thing. So I'm just gonna go kick on every other beat so I can get a nice tight snare in between. So there we go. So I'll now look into doing my kicks. Now, the way I do my kicks, I think, would be considered a little bit unconventional, but For my kind of style, it does work. So if this is the kind of thing you're looking for, by all means use this as a method. If it's not, obviously, I wouldn't use this because it's a little bit unconventional. So what I normally do, I drop the volume of the kick by about 6 or 7 dB or 8, and then from that point I'll literally just cut out the subs and then boost the low end. And then I'll stick a compressor on it. Fabfilter C is a really nice compressor. What I normally do is just stick on the basic punch one, and then up the output gain a little bit. That's peaking a little bit, but I'll address that in a minute. Another thing that I like to do sometimes, you may well consider it as cheating, but what is essentially Cubase's alternative to sausage fattener. But it does, I wouldn't use it on a whole track or anything because it does some weird stuff to the highs sometimes. But on stuff like kicks and snares, if you're looking for a really tight and fat snare, it can work really well, you know. I've never personally used sausage fattener. I can't say if it'll have the same effect, but with this, it's very nice. So, it's not playing. Take a little bit of volume off that. Pushing it a little bit past its peak isn't really a problem. If you just then limit it, it won't affect the sound of it at all. And then same with the hi-hats, what I'll normally do. In fact, actually, I'm going to do it a different way. When I'm sidechaining, I'll normally set up a group bus. I think this is probably what a lot of people do. If you're not familiar with sidechaining, it's essentially the act of making a sound duck underneath another sound. So in this case, I'd set it up so the hats and the piano duck every time the kick plays. So I'm going to make my kick sample a little bit shorter, and then route the hat and the piano to the sidechain. Again, I apologise if you're not using Cubase, as it most likely won't be the same, but hopefully this might be something you can translate to your workstation. So now that's all routed into there, sidechain that to the kick. So set up the sidechain on the compressor there with the key in, and then sidechains. Activate that. There we go. Now, at the moment, that's a very, very hard sidechain. So what I'm going to do, what I pretty much always do with my compressors, my sidechain compressors, unless I am specifically going for something else, I'll always whack the release right down. If you're looking for a very subtle kind of sidechain that just helps the mix a little bit, threshold would normally go down quite low, ratio moderate. And then if that's still a bit too heavy for you, just take the volume of the sender down a little bit. But of course, sorry about that. Lower threshold, obviously, much stronger sidechain. So, but I'm going to stick at the moment with kind of medium sidechain. There we go. So now that hat is still kind of there. In fact, what you can do sometimes is have a separate sidechain setup for the hi-hat when it hits the kick, which is significantly lighter than the group sidechain, but it still allows you to get that kind of punch of the hi-hat rather than taking it all the way. It seems to have worked okay here, though. You can still hear the attack of it, so that's okay. Right, one thing I do want to address just before, in fact, I'm going to turn off the equalizer and use a better equalizer. Pro Q is good because it's got the analyzer, but I know Logic's got one. FL might have one as well. I don't know, but using an analyzer is good because it means you can boost the right frequencies and whatnot. So with this particular kick sample that I've got, there's a little bit around here which punches through quite a lot, which is also it's always quite distracting for me, because when you got the final mix going, the kick doesn't really sit in there very nicely. So that might be a problem with your kick as well. So if you have got an analyzer, just literally look through to see which frequencies are kind of piercing through the most. So you can see there's a little bump here, but don't take out so much that it just ruins the kick, because you do want a bit of high end punch in there. So that's that. I'm going to leave the kick out of that, I think. In fact, I'm going to personally take that off, but the option's always there. Change the sidechain a little bit because it's a little bit too hard. There we go. So it's a very, very soft sidechain. Okay, so let's look at snare now. I'm going to use a sample which I normally use as just a placeholder. So this is the Hyperbits sample pack. This is more of a kind of, I guess, electro house sample pack. A lot of big room kind of stuff. You know, you got these big, really, really loud things. So we got this snare here is very, very nice. I think this is like a snare from the old Roland TR-505, I think it is, or the 707, one of the two. But it is just a very, very simple, nice little snare. What I do sometimes with this, which I'm going to do in this one as well, is I'll pitch shift it down 3 semitones, sounds about right. Just literally so it's a little bit like thicker and fatter, I guess. So play that with the track. Actually, what I'm going to do first before I play it is I'm going to send the sidechain to that snare as well. If you don't want to send the sidechain to the channels individually, you can set up a silent sidechain, which I will just go over quickly, just because not a lot of people seem to know how to silent sidechain, but it is different on other workstations, I do know that. So if I turn the sidechain off on both the kick and the snare, and on there, and then basically all I have to do is route the stereo out of the kick that I just made. So it's kicking on every beat, but you won't be able to hear it. So you route the stereo out of that kick to the sidechain. There we go. Let me play that. Make it a bit heavier so you can hear it. There we go. So you can hear the stuff's being sidechained and you can't hear the kick or anything with it. So you can hear already the snare is rather kind of punching through the mix quite a lot. So it's very simple EQ. The high's a little bit boosted too much. So with a lot of kind of snares and kicks, your kind of punch is often around the kind of 200 frequencies range. So sorry, 200 hertz range. But equally with the kick, like I showed you the kick, if you just get an EQ with an analyzer, you can see obviously the punch here for this one is around about here. So you want to boost it up a little bit. I'm going to get rid of kind of the sub frequencies with a bit of a low cut there. New just stick a little bit of reverb on it. A little bit of reverb on a. If your snare's a bit too dry, it's often a bit tedious to listen to. So a tiny little bit of reverb. I do like to send it to a reverb channel sometimes, and then filter the reverb channel, so you don't get any of the low end on the reverb, and it's just a really kind of nice sparkling reverb. So compressor on that. Again, just going to use the basic punch. I realise I'm just sticking compressor on and saying, okay, use this preset, but you can kind of see the settings here. So 17 minus 17 threshold, pretty high ratio, pretty high attack, slow release, sorry, fast release. So yeah, it's reasonably simple with that. Nothing else which is particularly confusing on there. So there's the snare. Make this sample a little bit smaller. So there's that. But at the moment the snare's sounding quite kind of flat on its own. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to layer it with a clap. Now clap samples are really quite hit and miss a lot of the time. It can be very hard to find. So I'm just going to see if I can find one that will do. This is from the Hyperbits sample pack again. So it's quite nice, just a simple clap. For this kind of music, I always like to have a very acoustic clap, so to speak. Just so it doesn't sound so like robotic and electronic. I guess the whole kind of idea with the drums and stuff in this is that they don't sound, you know, like it's a drum machine playing them. Hence the whole velocity automation and whatnot on the hi-hats. So that needs to go down a lot already. I always cut the low end out of claps. Use a compressor just to control the volume of it. Take the volume down quite a lot. You want the clap to be quite subtle underneath the snare, because if you have it too loud, it will just overpower the snare and it will kind of ruin the whole fatness of the snare as such. With this particular clap sample, I'm going to shorten it a little bit so there's not so much kind of tail end on it, and then I'm going to stick a bit of reverb on it again. I wouldn't recommend all the time putting just reverb on every single channel, because the problem I get when I'm working on a project is often it will get to a point where the CPU just can't handle it. Normally because there's too many reverbs. So, you know, setting up an FX channel, which in your case could just be an aux channel, just with a reverb on it. Send everything to that. Want to do how much reverb you want it, and then there we go, we're done. So clap. Okay. Tell you what, I'm gonna solo the beat. I'm gonna take off that delay as well. There we go. That's already sounding quite nice. So, just by following those kind of steps that I've just provided, you've already got a reasonably, you know, a quite nice tight kind of 110 BPM beat. You could use that in house stuff as well, I guess. Obviously, I haven't showed much about layering kicks on snares, which can be a little bit more tedious to mix because you lose a lot of the fatness of the snare. But nonetheless, for this kind of style, that's a good kind of beat to have that's nice and tight. I've obviously shown you which samples I've used as well, in case you wanted to use the same samples. And you can recreate the beat more or less precisely as I've done it. So I'm going to work on the sounds a little bit more now of the piano, etc. So I'm going to start off by adding the bass line. And I'm also going to start off by just getting rid of all of the other notes and literally just keep the bass of the piano in. I'm going to go octave lower, and then I'm going to work open massive and go about how I normally make a bass. Now, I kind of wanted to avoid doing a lot of tutorials on synths because they're often going to be very simple. If I just open up massive quickly. To make a synth, normally for me, which I will go over just in case anybody is interested. So I'm a fan of a lot of my Rhodes kind of stuff. I like a nice soft like E piano and stuff like that. But then I also kind of like a bit of, you know, synthesis influence on it as well. So all I'll do normally is I'll get a triangle all the way down, get the envelope open, I'll turn the sustain all the way off, and then just play around the decay until I get it to a point where I like it. And then that's really quite nice. And then obviously that sounds a bit bland at the moment, so I'll probably turn the wavetable position up a little bit. Anybody who follows me knows I'm quite a big fan of like Tennyson and stuff. So a lot of my sounds are kind of inspired by they're very similar in the way they just get like quite a simple, you know, triangle wave and just bit crush it or something a little bit. So that's already sounding quite nice. And then you probably want to get a little bit of reverb on there just to make it a bit nicer. I'm purposely using Ambience external plugin rather than the one inside Massive because I don't really like the reverb in Massive. It tends to just it tends to capture the kind of attack of it as well, and it's not very nice. So there we go. What I often like to do as well is just kind of pull the attack forward a little bit, so it's not like totally noticeable and it has like a massive attack on it, like. But if you pull it forward just a little bit, you can get rid of that click that comes in straight away, and it can sound just like nicely softer. There we go. And honestly, that is literally kind of all I do to my synths. I'll often, if you go into the voicing tab, you've got the unison box here. I normally take it up to 2. If I want a really wide synth, I'll get pan position, pull it off to the right a little bit, make it considerably wider. Also, I'll only ever do either vibrato or pitch cut off. I'll never do both at the same time, just because it kind of it's a bit hit and miss. So if you don't know, pitch cut off essentially kind of like the spread of the chord from the center note. So if you got it all the way down, obviously it's just as you play it, but if the more you turn it up, it gets a bit not very nice. You can drag this down so it's much less, probably 15, 14 is about as far as you really want to go. So you ever play around with that, turn the volume down because it's peaking a little bit, just to see kind of, you know, where you like it. But I'm going to take that off and I'm going to use vibrato. I like to have the rate. The rate needs to be quite high, and then a low depth, so it's quite subtle. And there we go. That's a basic kind of synth for me. I'm going to replace that with the piano for now. I'm also going to stick a little bit of release on it as well, just so it doesn't cut off so sharply. For a sequence like this, it doesn't work too well because it's not got a long decay, but obviously that's something you can fix. Alright, so bass. Okay, let's go. I'm going to start by turning it down a little bit. So similarly with the chord synth, I'll often just get a triangle to start off with. And similarly with the triangle again, low sustain up the decay a bit, just so it kind of fizzles out a little bit. I'm going to bring that up an octave so it's easy to hear. Obviously, the velocity editing won't do anything here really, only if I had the macro setup, which I won't show because I'm not entirely sure how it works, but something to do with this harder velocity. I think you can like set it up to the cutoff or something, so the harder you play it, the more it attenuates to the cutoff. So, but like I said, I won't go over that now. Okay. Yeah, I apologise for these kind of synthesis being very simple. I don't really go too creative with my synths, but nonetheless, here we go. So that is essentially just a sub, really, which is very simple. There is a, although I hate to use a preset for this, in FM8, if you have FM8, there was a very nice preset with bass guitar, which for me is very nice because you can get really nice kind of slaps in there and stuff, which is also very nice for this style. So I'll look into this a little bit because some people might want to do kind of funky bass lines and what. So you need kind of like octave slaps. So we go. I normally have the velocity higher on the slaps, just so they're kind of a lot more hard hitting. Much shorter samples as well. There we go. Let's take that out for now. I'm going to add another slap in. There we go. So just some nice little short pops there as such. Obviously this is very basic, I'd probably spend a lot more time over it, but I don't want to kind of make this a bit tedious to watch. So I'll leave it at that just for now. Obviously do more as you go along, but in fact that doesn't sound great, but you get the general idea of it. So yeah, that's that. Not really sure what much more I can go over. I'll tell you what, I can quickly go over just kind of filling up the background a little bit. So I'm going to use this. So what I'd normally do is stick a little pad in the background, but for this I'll do a very kind of very, very, very simple. Just take the low end out. Also take out those decoration notes. We don't need those for this. Probably going to go up an octave just so it fills up the higher ends. Open the EQ for it. Big low cut, high pass, and then a little bit of a high boost. Maybe as well, what I might do is turn the wetness of the reverb up as well, just so it's make that very subtle, so it's just quite low down. Might be nice to get a bit of kind of very subtle panning automation on that as well. I'm going to put a filter on the bass just to I do like to do this quite a lot, so if you are getting this kind of slaps in there, filter it out a little bit so it's not, doesn't sound so robotic. Normally what I do with the bass as well, again something that's probably a little bit unconventional, but nonetheless, is I will just boost the lows a little bit, or quite a lot. So that's just a very, very, very basic tutorial, I guess. I guess that's all I've got to say for now. I'll probably looking to do more of these later. Obviously, this just being the first one, I've just gone for something very, very, very simple. So I hope this helped. For anybody a little bit more advanced, I apologise. Hopefully I can come up with something to cater for you in the future. So, yeah, thanks for watching.